The year of our Lord 2022 will forever be remembered as a great year, for gaming at least. Never mind all the invasions, failed attempts at legal misandry, and sports washing propaganda campaigns. Video games continue to be the torchbearers for consistent high quality entertainment. In this video, I'd like to lay bare the decadence that we enjoyed in 2022 and the heavy load last year's successes are about to encumber our respective backlogs with. So instead of just saying we had great games, I'm going to show you we had great games. We kick things off with the greatest video of all time, Elden Ring. I'm exaggerating, of course. Everyone knows that the greatest video game of all time is any mainline Metal Gear Solid game except Phantom Pain. But back to the matter at hand. On the 25th of February 2022, From Software dropped one of the most hyped games of all time, and unlike CD Projekt Red's Magnum Chungus, Elden Ring actually worked. Not only did it work, it was a marvel to look at, listen to, and play at launch. Of course, you had to know how to play it. Otherwise, you either accepted that it wasn't for you, or you ran the risk of embarrassing yourself on the internet. At this point, it has become common practice for video game journalists to complain about the difficulty in FromSoft games. But now that some players are getting in on the act, one wonders if Miyazaki will buckle under the pressure and stray from his vision of game design. Regardless of what happens with future installments in this franchise, we still got the generational title that is Elden Ring. Contrary to Quantum's innermost musings, people will be singing the praises and playing Elden Ring until the next console cycle begins at the very least. No, I'm not talking about those sleazy mid-generation refreshes either. I'm talking about the PS5 and the Xbox whatever the hell Aaron calls it this time. I'm done guessing what they'll call Xbox consoles. They went from degrees to classic numbering, and then they decided to give us a concept name. Aaron couldn't even be bothered to call a Zoom meeting to... You know what? Never mind. June 16th brought us Neon White, an FPS that relies heavily on a fast pace and puzzles while also throwing tricky enemies at the player. Rated a 9 out of 10 on Steam, this is an above average title that, while underrated at launch, got tongues wagging by word of mouth. Stray launched July 19th to high praise from gamers and the media in general. The only complaint that was consistent from both sides was that it was too short. If people's main gripe with your game is that they wanted more of said game, rest assured you have over-delivered. Not to throw any shade at the game, but the premise and protagonist did a lot of the heavy lifting as far as likability is concerned, in my opinion. Cats are the second most popular pets in the world, and more people are getting attached to the idea of transhumanism the more we engage with and become dependent on technology. So Stray had to do a lot wrong to get flamed by people. I also did a review on it for GameCritics.com, link in the description if you want more detailed breakdown of the game. Did I include Stray so I could plug my article on GameCritics.com? No, of course not, I didn't. Anyways, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 dropped on July 19th. Although I'm not personally a fan of the franchise, it had a lot of organic hype on social media, and when it launched, I heard nothing negative about it. Nothing but praise and adulation from the people that bought and played the game. As a quick aside, I don't believe in only talking about or appreciating the games I've personally played. That sort of thinking does not lead to any constructive result when taken to its natural conclusion. If you cannot talk about the games you haven't played, as a consequence, you cannot talk about the consoles that you do not own. Then what would the fanboys that rag on each other's plastic boxes talk about online? Imagine a PlayStation fanatic having to either shut up about Xbox because he does not own one, or have to admit to all his buddies that he bought, owns, and regularly plays all the games on Xbox. Let's take a step further. Imagine not being able to talk about the Texans because you don't live in Texas. Imagine not being able to talk about politics because you're not a politician with credentials to the White House. Doesn't sound fun now, does it? August 30th brought us Immortality, an interactive film video game. I shall repeat myself. Xbox released an Xbox console exclusive named Immortality that is an interactive film video game. So much for all that talk about PlayStation only releasing one and done narrative focused games. As soon as this thing dropped and hit 90 plus on Metacritic, the fanatics on the green side lost their minds talking about masterpiece this and masterpiece that. I've downloaded it, but sadly haven't found time to play it myself. But the ever-reliable Cozy Beluga says that it is a special game well worth our time, so here's hoping the reported sex scene is as entertaining as described. No, I'm not making sure not to delete the game just to watch the sex scene. I'm not. Stop looking at me like that. Splatoon 3 splashed into our collective lives on September 8th, selling 7.9 million copies to date, making it the fastest selling game in the franchise and one of the best selling Switch games, period. That alone should sell you on the game if you enjoyed the previous installments. Metal Hellsinger made its grand entrance on September 13th, garnering rave reviews from most critics, yours truly included, and gamers alike. Amazing music, an engrossing gameplay loop, and nice visuals held back by a bare-bones story. This is a must-have if you enjoy playing video games more than you like 10-minute long intervals of Hollywood-quality cutscenes and nuanced character development. I also did a review of Metal Hellsinger on GameCritics.com, link below if you want more info on it. I promise this is the last shameless plug I'll make for my articles published on GameCritics.com or other websites. Amicia made her return to the rat-infested gaming populace on October 17th in a Plague Tale Requiem. Armed with more funding, Asobo Studios knocked it out of the park with a memorable title that improved on its predecessor and set up what is going to be one of the most anticipated games when Asobo announces when the next Plague Tale game releases. But for now, gamers all over the world get to bask in the soft glow that is a Plague Tale Requiem. On October 20th, gamers got to experience the closest thing to digital cocaine since Pokemon. Vampire Survivors is an indie game that perfectly encapsulates that quote that says, "You have to experience it yourself." At first or 10th glance, it looks unimpressive, but if you ever make the mistake of actually giving it a go, just for the lols, I will not be held liable for whatever happens to your life henceforth. I've never had to actively tell people not to engage with a game because they might like it too much. But here I am. If you want to try Vampire Survivors, buyer beware. Signalis came out on October 27th, a survival horror game that will put a smile and a tear in the eye of gamers who have been longing for faithful adaptations of classic games in that genre, while also shying away from the third person, left or right shoulder angle and drab aesthetics the survival horror genre has become plagued with. Bayonetta 3 launched on October 28th. The game was well received by actual fans, evidenced by it selling over 40,000 physical copies within its first week of release in Japan, while also debuting at number 3 in the UK sales charts. Bayonetta 3 also won Best Action Game at the Game Awards last year. I know most people only really care about the 2 Game of the Year categories and will only ever remember those two, but Best Action Game of the Year is a nice little indicator to how good Bayonetta 3 is. Kratos and Atreus shambled onto PlayStations on November 9th, garnering a Metacritic score of 94% from critics. While it did not reinvent the entire franchise the way God of War 2018 did, what it does is move the story to a thrilling crescendo that satisfies many fans of the franchise. This is not the DLC people were out here memeing about. This is a good sequel to a groundbreaking game. Well done to Sony Santa Monica for clearing a very, very high bar. Pentiment launched on November 15th to the ire of PlayStation fanboys all over the world. They made so much fun of it because of its appearance, only to see it take over the internet for weeks on end, garnering 10 out of 10s from various publications like IGN. But the coup de grace, the green-colored icing on this cake, was the sheer amount of organic love this game received from the community. Pentiment is still rated 10 out of 10 on Steam, a site that only lets people that have bought and played games to rate said games. Rest in salt, brothers. Maybe December treated y'all better. Need for Speed Unbound drifted onto store shelves and online game stores on November 29th. You could play the game 3 days earlier if you got the Palace Edition. So even though EA delivered a great game, they could not resist the temptation to be even a little bit scummy for an extra buck. I paid for the Palace Edition, But that's besides the point. Stop looking at me like that. Anyway, Need for Speed Unbound was worth every penny charged if I'm being honest. From the adrenaline pumping races, absent rubber banding and the removal of infinite restarts to races, to the buttery smooth drifting mechanics, this thing is the best arcade racing game since 2005's Need for Speed Most Wanted. And don't get me started on that awesome soundtrack, which even includes a Kwasa Kwasa banger from Central Africa. Special shout out goes to the sound engineer that recorded and spliced in all the different gear shift sounds for each car, depending on how said car had been upgraded. Your work is audio porn to any self-respecting gearhead. I salute you, good sir or madam. I'm not sexist. It is a love letter to the OG Need for Speed games with updated graphics and mechanics. The story is cheesy in a good way, leaning into the ridiculousness of a city plagued by street racers and cops that gives zero shits about public safety without being corny or cringe-inducing. Also, yes, when I said this is the best arcade racer since Need for Speed Most Wanted in 2005, I'm including every single Forza Horizon game in that comparison. Marvel's Midnight Suns launched on December 1st, and while I was not originally excited about the whole turn-based card combat system, K-Mega sold me on it after the game launched, and I have to admit, this one is worth the full $60. And even if you're too busy playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, you should at least add it to your backlog. You won't regret it. Speaking of the old COD, Modern Warfare 2 launched on October 27th and made $1 billion in unit sales alone within 10 days. That's it. That is all I'm going to say about this game, if we can even call it just a game at this point. $1 billion in 10 days. Off of just unit sales. No microtransaction shenanigans. Just people buying the base game. The last big game to launch in 2022 was High on Life. It launched on Xbox to the chagrin of the aforementioned man babies in the blue camp, who did their best to pretend at first that the game was nothing to write home about, but changed their tune to the game is only popular because of Rick and Morty jokes, as soon as not only hardcore gamers but even casual gamers fell in love with it. Stop it, guys. You're embarrassing yourselves. High on Life is popular because it is a great game. The humor is an added plus, but the art style is riveting, the platforming is engaging, the weapons not only provoke a feeling of wonder with their appearance, they also have more personality than Alex and her robot dinosaurs. Make peace with it and move on. It'll hurt less. So there you go. 2022 was great, and now you know why. Thank you for listening.